Hey, everybody, welcome to another awesome episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui and Josh, my co host out here on the internet's hosting this week's program of everything that's good and exciting, sometimes weird, going on in the world of motorcycling. And we've got a great show for you today, so make sure you stick around. And more importantly, make sure you've got some tissues handy, because unless you've been living underneath a rock, you know that the big news that's been going on for the past week is what's going on over in MotoGP, and that will be the retirement of Mr. Valentino Rossi. So that is going to be my sneak peek for Josh's segment of today's program. But first things first, while we were talking MotoGP, I wanted to go ahead and touch on a really interesting story that hit the news this past week, and that is that MotoGP racer for KTM, Danilo Petrucci, is going to be trading in his racing leathers for a little bit more of an off-road program, because he is going to be jumping in and racing the Dakar Rally in the beginning of January. This, I think, is completely unheard of. Josh, have you ever heard of anything like this? A MotoGP racer decided to make such a huge jump over into off-road racing.
It's interesting that that's happening, just because of the fact when you look at how many times stuff crosses over like that, it's not really all that often. And I mean, as I learned over the years, skills that you have on the street just don't translate to the off-road side of things. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he handles that.
Well, he's in really good hands because he races with the folks over at KTM, and they've absolutely supported this whole passion and effort. A lot of folks don't realize that Danilo actually is a very successful, very strong off-road racer in his own right, and he's been dreaming about this ever since he was a young man. So they decided to make his dreams come true here at the end of 2021, and going into 2022, he is going to be racing the Dakar, but he's going to have help from some other notable Dakar legends, including Toby Price. So he's in super good hands. He's going to have a great time. I know that he's going to. And I am absolutely looking forward to seeing the Dakar Rally. It's one of my most favorite events, but I think him coming just off the tracks of MotoGP, I mean, he's barely going to have a month of a break to train and get ready to go race Dakar. Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, like I said, it's just that skill set, and the fact that you said, the fact that he is changing so quickly, I mean, it's brutal. And I mean, to go to a brutal race, that just, some people just love it. And that's one of those guys that, I mean, just two wheels, anything, he wants to get on it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that coverage. But speaking of other MotoGP racers that do like to go play in the dirt, and of course, the big news story for today's show, Valentino Rossi retired this last weekend in Valencia, the last race of the season. He's officially hanging up his leathers. I don't know if folks realize this or not, but Valentino Rossi actually hosts a training program for flat track racing in Italy. Yes. He is a huge flat track racer. He's a huge dirt guy. He's way into it. And he's officially retiring. And I know, Josh, you've got all sorts of awesome details about this very sad, momentous occasion in MotoGP. The doctor has left the building.
Yeah, no, and I've got my tissues here also, just from the fact that, yeah, it's one of those things where, to me, I'm so sad about it because I've watched Rossi since GP 125. So, I mean, we've got the photo here. This is the doctor in the house back in the day on the GP 125. So when you look at his history, there's two things that make him such an icon. And he's one of these once-in-a-lifetime figures to me. Now, 9 championships in 97 and 99. So 97, he won the GP 125s. 99, he won the GP 250s. Then MotoGP in 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 8, then 9. I mean, that is just, I mean, it's unheard of. So that is the first part of it. And to me, it's probably what puts him in the record books. But to me, what I think is so awesome and why he will be so missed is who he is and the character that he is. you cannot go back to look at any Rossi victories and not see something like a chicken riding the back of the motorcycle on his victory lap, or him bowling on a victory lap. His passion for not only the sport, but the people around him and the love that he had for what he did. To me, that is what made him such a special character and what brought him up to he elevated the whole level of MotoGP. In this, if you look, this is a shot from him this year with Yamaha. If you go to MotoGP's channel, like their YouTube and that, there is an awesome tribute, and this should tell you something about how much he's meant to people. Keanu Reeves kind of starts it out. So for Keanu Reeves to take note on something like this, pretty cool. The second person to speak is Tom Cruise. So both of them talk about this. It's known they're fans, but some of the celebrities that are like, hey, thank you, Valentino. I mean, Mark Webber, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, U.S. people, you've got Chad Reed, you've got Travis Pastrana, you've got guys like Jimmy Johnson that are like, I loved watching your career. There's a bunch of footballers, the original Ronaldo, Gianluigi, I always pronounce his name wrong, Buffon, was a hero of mine as an old Italian goalkeeper. And Andrea Pirlo, I mean, you've got all these people. There was also a ton of people that I know are Italian soap opera people. I don't know that they are. They were just unbelievably all good looking, and they said this in Italian. So I'm like, that's got to be who these people are. But all these people are saying thank you in videos to him. And to me, it's to get that many people loving the sport and everything is awesome. So, I mean, do you got a memory, or what are your thoughts with Valentino over his career and leaving?
Well, I've been a huge Valentino Rossi fan for years, along with literally everybody else on the planet, obviously. He is a beloved character. He is a racer's racer. Everybody loves him. You've already touched on some of his more popular antics. And I say that with all terms of endearment. Yeah, I use that with all terms of endearment because he brought so much fun and energy and entertainment to racing. He will always be beloved for that. All these shenanigans, all of the different paint liveries and helmets and pulling over to jump out and use the porta potty after a race and just all this crazy stuff that would happen. You never knew what was going to happen, which kept it terrifically exciting. But as far as my love of Valentino Rossi, it absolutely started with the movie Faster. Because that movie was just, for me, such a mind-opening and eye-opening experience and peek into the world of MotoGP. And it was the beginning of my true love affair of watching Grand Prix racing. It's just a fabulous movie. If you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to do so. But they definitely pitted, he was like the hero, and then there was the villain. And they talked about this year and a half progress of them just literally coming to blows and just a dramatic, amazing movie. But it just paints him as even more of a hero character. So it's just impossible to not love him. But it was his 371st MotoGP start. And in his last race of his entire career, he finished position number 10th. And he was very, very satisfied with that. He felt like that was a really nice way to leave the sport. In a couple of interviews that I've been looking through, he did speak to the fact that for that weekend, it was so full of love. There was a huge mural painted on the side of the Valencia grandstands. They just showed him so much love. There was parties. He was inducted into the MotoGP Hall of Fame. It was a huge love fest. He said, so it was hard to be sad during the Valencia weekend. He said, but 1 month from now, 2 months from now, and then in March when the season opens again, he said he's definitely gonna feel it. He's definitely gonna be sad. He's gonna miss the sport that he's been such a huge part of for such a terrific long time. So I'm really excited to see what's going on his next page in his book of the Valentino Rossi legend. I can tell you that just dropped today, actually, a press release, a news release talking about the fact that he is going to be a manager of a racing team. VR46 is going to be racing in MotoGP next year.
Yes.
And they've already and their motorcycles are going to be coming from nobody other than Ducati. That's right.
Yeah.
He's going back in for seconds. He's signed papers, and his
Yeah.
team is going to be aboard Ducati motorcycles, which was arguably one of the rockiest points in his career was when he was partnered with that machine. And he's promised also, apologize for interrupting, he's already promised that he personally is going to test ride this bike at some point in the next handful of months.
Yeah, I mean, to have your team owner be Valentino Rossi, I mean, he's done the VR46 for a little while now, and talk about development with it. So the biggest question, and it's a point that you brought up and reminded me of, every time I've been at the track and have had to go to the bathroom, I always think of that moment, because there is no way for me to peel my leathers off. And I think I always go back to think about, how did he do that in the porta potty? I have no idea how it. It's
he
one of those
didn't
things
actually go. Yeah, if you watch it, he didn't actually go because he was in there for like 40 seconds. There's no way anybody got out of a suit and went to the restroom. It was again just for antics, just for show. He knew he would get a laugh. He was willing to, to be that guy, to do something completely outrageous in order to get that laugh. And I think that was pretty awesome. So much love to Valentino Rossi. Sure. Some tears, a little bit of sad feelings, but a lot of love. And I can't wait to see what happens next year for his team in MotoGP. Now, while we are talking about legendary and iconic Italians, I just wanted to bring up a couple of bikes and some news that's been going on for the folks over at MV Agusta. I don't know if you caught, Josh, they released a limited edition motorcycle within the past handful of weeks, and it is a Superveloce that is a limited limited livery, and it is going to be, it's a beautiful red bike, Ashley. It is going to be dedicated entirely to Giacomo Agostini. So I thought that this was really fascinating because, first of all, it's Agostini. It's another legendary Italian racer, right? But also the bike is absolutely stunning. It's this beautiful red and silver bike. It's got a great big one on the side, Ash, if you want to keep on trucking through the slides. And it's a limited edition, and they only are going to make 300 and some odd numbers of them, which is the number. There we go, and that is Mr. Giacomo Agostini at the ripe young age of 79 years old aboard that bike. He still is alive. He still is kicking. He still loves motorcycles. That's his original leathers that he still fits in from the Wayback Machine, so he still is very fit, very trim, and loves to go racing. Anyway, this beautiful bike. They're making very limited production of it. I believe it's already sold out. I've talked to a couple of Ducati dealerships, and they were like pre-sold, gone, daddy, gone. They were around $35,000. But this is, look at this, Josh. Look at this beautiful thing. So it's an MV Agusta. It's a gorgeous triple. Absolute stunner. I love the fact that they're paying homage to a little bit of their history, a little bit of their DNA. If you're not familiar, Giacomo Agostini and MV Agusta have had a very, very long, very storied relationship together. So for them to honor him in this way with this machine is truly special. I believe they only made like 311 off the top of my head, because that's the number of MotoGP wins that he had with MV Agusta. Yep. So I thought that was really spectacular. But God, is that bike dead sexy. What do you think about it, Josh?
It is, and it's so funny because I remember, I think it was 17, 18 years ago when there was the re-release of the MV, and kind of the reincarnation of it. And I remember those 4 pipes that stuck up underneath the tail section that looked like a church organ. And I saw that and I thought, oh my goodness, that is probably the prettiest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. Until you saw me, Josh. Yeah, those are right. Yeah, that's sorry,
buddy.
So to me, that is one of those things where it is just that art in motion. And it's the same thing. It's this timeless classic design that, if you look, the 916 and 996 Ducatis still have that just drop dead gorgeous look. And this is the same thing. And the fact that they've done it up in these colors with this look and everything like that, it's Italian.
Yeah, it's La Dolce Vita. It's sex on wheels for sure. I think it's
Yes.
absolutely wonderful. He also went ahead and autographed all of those limited edition machines as well. So
Yeah.
300 and some odd very lucky people are going to have the opportunity to take that home. And I don't know if they would ride it. Would you ride it, or would you just park it in your living room, Josh?
See, that is a very tough one for me, because that is one of those things where I would want to just ride the wheels off of it, but I also know I would end up chucking it at the scenery. So this is one of those things where it's like, okay, just set it aside, and just stare at it. Just drool over it.
Yeah.
I don't need a
Yeah.
television. I would just look at that in the living room.
Yeah, I love it. So while we were talking about MV Agusta and MV Agusta doing a little bit of a trip down memory lane with its upcoming motorcycles, they're reaching back into their catalog and pulling some of these favorites and some of their history forward. They also are teasing out a new adventure bike with the Lucky Explorer project. And so
Yeah.
the Lucky Explorer project is an adventure bike. They've got a couple of them. They're going to be unveiled at EICMA, which is just happening next week. So I'm really excited to see that. It pays a little bit of homage to the history of MV Agusta, the fact that they were in bed together with Cagiva back in the Wayback Machine, and the Cagiva would run what's called an Elephant. That's a motorcycle that they made in the 1980s, I believe. So this is the original one that you're seeing on the screen right now. They were, it's got the Cagiva on it. It's also got Ducati on it. They were all in bed together at one time. It gets all very confusing in the Wayback Machine of who owned who and who was part of what and whatever. But look at this super cool machine. This is, again, that's one of the more original bikes, but they're teasing and hinting out, and they're showing these images again, and they're talking about how they're going to relaunch it. So I'm real curious to see what happens at EICMA. And I think I do have another slide, Ashley, for this bike. I don't know if I threw one in there or not, but just really, really neat from them. I love seeing them go into the off-road adventure market, as you and I talk a lot on this show, Josh. It's huge business. It's a booming, booming segment. So if they're going to go play in that area and take a step away from their beautiful triples that they're known for and these aggressive, gorgeous, like I said, the Superveloce, what better place to go look for inspiration than in their own DNA and in their own history? So what do you think about that, Josh? I know you love adventure off-road type bikes.
So yeah, I mean, with me just loving the getting as far away from humans as possible, that is for, I mean, and that's really, it has been the trend. People have rediscovered off-road, and I think it's because of so many. When you look at the age ranges of people have come up, they started out on dirt bikes, and they've kind of said, okay, I was one that went. We were street Rossies before street Rossi was a term. So now we're all like, hey, let's kind of return to our roots. We no longer need to go 700 miles an hour. We still want to go fast, but let's go off-road. And so for them to dive into this area and to bring, like you talk about, that sex on wheels to adventure bikes, there are some great looking adventure bikes, but there's no Italian adventure bikes. And we know how the Italians love to make things just drop dead gorgeous. So to me, I mean, obviously Aprilia's coming out with their version. It does look good, but it's not a big bike. I'm excited to see what this looks like. It's a great way for them to capture some of that market segment. And I mean, if you're going to have the Agusta in the living room, then this is going to be the bike that you're going to take out for the ride, right?
That way you could totally stay on brand and be MV Agusta all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that bike is excellent. I personally have a friend who has a Cagiva Elephant. It's just a cool, very interesting,
Yes.
way ahead of its time bike. I think even that image that was just up a second ago, even though that is that older machine from the period, I mean, that looks today. That looks right now. That reminds me of a Tenere. Like, I would absolutely buy that bike in a second and think it happened just right now. So again, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen from EICMA. EICMA, while we're talking about all things La Dolce Vita today, obviously, EICMA is the world's largest motorcycle trade show. It is taking place in Milan, Italy next weekend. So once that hits, our show, not next weekend because it'll be before EICMA. But after it, we will cover, I'm sure, all sorts of new releases and bikes and sneak peeks and prototypes.
We're going to be
There'll
busy.
be great images. We're going to be really busy. So make sure that you are staying tuned and you are turning your notifications and subscriptions on, because you're not going to want to miss it. We're going to have a lot of really exciting news coming your way in the next handful of weeks for sure. What's next? Speaking of new bikes, Josh, what do you have going on in your next segment?
So Honda said, I guess they left a Grom and a Ruckus in a dark room alone for a while. And now we just have...
And there was like a fight?
No, they did not fight. They got along very well, I'm sure. Is we now have the Honda Navi coming out. And this is actually something that I'm pretty stoked about. Just from the fact is, it's just a cool little bike. And they set it up, the other joke that I was thinking about using was, are you worried about your Grom being too powerful? Is with this one, it is 110 cc's. It is an automatic transmission, so there's no clutch. So this is very beginner friendly, but it's not a scooter because not everyone wants to start on a scooter. So this has a good Grom look to it. It's, like I said, it's 110 cc's. It's no clutch. It has some of the other specs that I have on it. It has a 30.1 inch seat height is all. So that means Jacqui can flat foot it. It also has a 0.9 gallon fuel capacity, which when you realize that fuel has to make its way through a 16 millimeter carburetor, guess what? You're never gonna need to fill this thing up probably. The picture we got up here, it also has a really cool storage compartment on it because just because you don't want to look like you're riding on a scooter, you still need some storage. So it's got that storage compartment there. It's 236 pounds. It's got drum brakes, so that way they can keep the price down. It is $1,807 is the MSRP on it. It's going to come in red, grasshopper green, nut brown, and ranger green. So what are your thoughts on this little machine here, Jacqui? I'm interested to hear your comments. The internet's been going nuts about this. I can't blame them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I gotta say, the minute this dropped, I was squealing with delight. I am over the moon excited about it. I totally agree with, well, I just want to point out a handful of different things and about the whys of why this little machine is here or important or whatever, or what are they thinking? Because you're right. Just when I thought I needed a super underpowered Grom or an underpowered Ruckus, they answered the question that nobody asked. But that's not true. That's not totally true, because here's what they did solve. They solved the fact that in the past 18 months to 2 years, I would say, e-bikes have gone through the roof. Sales have been completely ballistic of people getting on, I'm going to use the word motorized, but it's not motorized, it's battery operated, but getting on some sort of motorized two-wheel situation that's like a twist and go, and they're willing to drop $2,000 for it. But e-bikes are everywhere. A friend of mine just came back from Paris. He said it is crazy, the e-bike scene there. Literally everybody is on them. And in Europe, bicycles are a total mainstay. They're everywhere. So to watch this slow conversion of people going over to e-bikes, I think is really fascinating. But what I'm getting at is the fact that Honda probably saw this and were like, how many more people are we going to lose to the e-bike business when we could just skin this cat ourselves and build a twist and go not battery operated because it's an internal combustion, but small in size, small displacement, twist and go, no clutch, light, and low to the ground vehicle that, by the way, if you look at your slides, if you didn't tell me any better and took the branding off and didn't show me the side with the pipe, I would probably think that was an e-bike. I think it is a dead ringer for a modern e-bike in its styling also. So I think they just decided to try to get ahead of this curve before new riders and younger people who don't want to drop more than $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to get into motorcycling. They're going to jump over and jump onto e-bikes instead. They have been. The numbers prove it. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity. And then my second big tangent that I'm going to go off on about this machine is the fact that this huge boom in trailer, van life, and RV life, this is the perfect vehicle to throw into your van, put on your hitch rack, whatever, and now you've got a pit bike or campground bike for $1,800 that's got the Honda badge on it, so you know it's got reliability to it. That 16 millimeter carburetor also leads me to think that there's maybe some opportunity to crank a little bit more power out of that small displacement, 110cc engine, just for fun, just for funsies. I would think that maybe there's a way to kind of squeak a couple little bit more, ounces of horsepower out of it, but that's just who I am. But I think it's wonderful. And again, I have been waiting for one of the motorcycling companies to come out with a sub $2,000 competitor to the e-bike business that is absolutely eating everybody's lunch money in the sub $2,000 space.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and when you look at this super simple way to get a licensed motorcycle that you can ride. The campground thing that you mentioned is dead on, because a lot of campgrounds, you can't take a small dirt bike or anything like that. And it used to be, I remember campgrounds used to be filled with Z50s running around like mad. And because people would put the loud exhaust and stuff like that on them, they're like, hey, no more dirt bikes. It's got to be licensed. It's got to be street legal to ride it in our campground. Ta-da, here you go. $1,800 in, you're there. The other thing is, I know you mentioned the power aspect of it. When you look at just the crazy stuff that people have done to Groms.
Exactly.
I see this. I don't know that this will necessarily have the cult following that the Grom does. But
I think so.
There's still going to be. They're going to have a tough time keeping these in the dealerships, especially at $1,800. I'm tempted just to go get groceries with this thing, because like I said, it's just under a gallon of fuel. You're going to need to fill that up annually. If you just run to the grocery store and that, to me, it's just going to be a phenomenal setup for that. I think Honda, you're right. They see this market segment that no one's necessarily attacking, and they're losing customers to it. So let's go out and grab those. And I think this is, if Honda's watching right now, I want a test ride.
If Honda's watching right now, I want one, period. I don't need to test ride it. I want it at my house. I want it in my van. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. Just holler at me and let me know. But yeah, you meet the nicest people on Honda. That's been their slogan for 50 some odd years now. And this is a smile machine. You cannot look at this adorable little thing that costs $1,800 and not smile at that. That to me is amazing. I am here for it. I support this 110%. And the tiny little cubby where you can hide your sandwiches and a can of soda pop, I think is excellent. So bravo to Honda for stepping up and trying to help bring either new riders into the fold with a much more approachable combustion engine machine, or give just people like you and I another option, an inexpensive but super reliable Honda-based option to throw in the back of your van and go use at the campground.
It's funny you say that too, because that's the other thing is so many cities, parking is a ginormous pain in the neck. When you look at this bike, park it anywhere you want. Put it in a doorway. It is too cute for someone to get mad at it and be like, who parked this here? What jerk is going to write a parking ticket for this bike? It's like giving a cat or a puppy a ticket. You can't do it.
Exactly. No, you can't. You can't be
possible.
mad at that little guy. No, you cannot be mad at that little guy. You just want to love him and take him home and give him a cuddle. I totally agree, and I love it. I'm so glad that you snuck this topic in. It just dropped today, I think. I think you threw this into the program last minute on me. So yesterday is when they dropped this guy. So that means they're definitely going to have them at EICMA. So I cannot wait to see them. I wish I was going to see them live and in person, but I will settle for really rad EICMA photos and people sitting on them and everybody lighting up and smiling, because I think this is the Grom 2.0, and I think it's going to be bananas, and I think they're going to sell out just like they did with the Grom, with the Monkey, with the Cub, with all of their retro-styled smaller machines. If the rest of the OEMs aren't listening, We want the small bikes. We don't. Not everybody wants huge machines, man, and they've proved it time and time and time again by selling out of these things every single year at their dealerships all across the world. So today's big high five goes to the folks over at Honda for bringing another awesome machine to market. And that, Josh, that's just about today's show. What did you think about that? That was an awful lot of good news, some sad news, but also good news because Valentino Rossi is going to be running a race team next year. All sorts of interesting stuff going on this week. And it looks like Josh is having a little bit of trouble with his microphone. I don't know if he accidentally unplugged it or not. So I missed that whole last rant of yours, Josh. But I'll try to lip read it and figure it out on the back end. But I'm sure what he was saying is, you're right, Jacqui. This was an excellent program. There was lots of great stuff going on in motorcycling. You, Jacqui, did a heck of a great job this week. You look great. Your new headset is wonderful. Tuning in from and recording from all over the world like I do every single week. This week I'm in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee. I will be in Cleveland on this weekend. But thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Make sure you go ahead, click like, share, notifications on for On the Throttle, because in the next handful of weeks especially, we're going to be bringing you more awesome brand new bikes that are going to be coming to market. EICMA reveals. We're going to have tons and tons of good stuff going on over the next handful of weeks in particular. So make sure you come on back. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.